From collapsing stadiums to stage crashes, this is our list of the most embarrassing moments in sports. Stay tuned to find out whose mom ran into the mix of things to tend to his wounds. And for the record, we're going to leave Michael Jordan playing basketball against a bunch of cartoons out of this one. I think the infamy of Space Jam is punishment enough. Number 10. Bye Cameraman. Famous athletes put their name, their reputation, and their pride on the line every time that they compete. One wrong move or one wrong play, and their reputation can be ruined. Because of that, we can understand a bit of embarrassment from a player when something doesn't go quite as they had planned. However, the former Chicago Bulls forward Dennis Rodman may have gotten a bit too embarrassed back in 1997. Rodman went for a rebound, but just barely missed. Falling, Rodman ended up booty down on the court. So, while we understand that this may have been embarrassing enough for the athlete, it was something that a nearby cameraman figured the fans at home definitely wanted to see. Rodman likely would have lived down this otherwise trivial mistake too, if he hadn't have reacted by intentionally kneeing the cameraman who was recording him in the groin area. There is a such thing as too much pride. Number 9. I think you missed. Baseball is a fast-paced game, filled with explosive athletes who, despite failing more than succeeding when they're up to bat, always push forward and attempt to round the other team's bases. In baseball, it's not uncommon to hear a batting average that sounds pretty low, but as the frequency of success goes, it's actually pretty good. And generally, when a player misses, their bat just swings past the ball that they're aiming for. However, sometimes things get a little more interesting than that. Jimmy Rollins is oftentimes considered a pretty good player. That said, everyone makes mistakes, and a few years back, he made one that he will not quickly forget. Rollins was up to bat. He watched the pitcher wind up an air-crackling throw, and then he swung. In his defense, he did hit the ball. Unfortunately, the ball also hit him, right in the face, as it ricocheted off the side of his bat. Someone might need to remind him which way the ball is supposed to travel. Number 8. Missing the birdie. Different sports handle deciding who's going to face whom in different ways. Some sports go by international ranking, some by what the fans want to see, and others have elimination-style leagues. This system is in place to make sure that teams challenge the best at their own level, so that athletes get to test their mettle and to have a fair shot at victory. And also so fans get their time's worth of fast-paced entertainment. Sometimes, though, an athlete or a team tries to game the system. In 2008, the Olympic badminton players threw their games on purpose. Why, you might ask, would a world-class athlete who's trained their entire lives to secure victory for their home nation intentionally lose? Well, apparently, the players were trying to drop their standings in order to secure future matches against easier opponents. Needless to say, all of these players were disqualified. Number 7. LeBron James takes the L. We all get frustrated sometimes. Athletes are under a lot of pressure, perhaps especially those who have garnered international fame and recognition. These beloved athletes have the weight of their massive reputations resting on their shoulders every single time they step out onto the court, into the ring, or onto the field. Back in 2015, one of the world's most famous basketball players of our time let the pressure of his chosen profession get to his head. The court was packed, and LeBron James was leading the Cleveland Cavaliers in a rough game that was getting ugly fast. After failing to score while his team had possession of the ball, James stormed off the court while the ball was still in play. Now, this is a big no-no in basketball, and his team was quickly fouled on his behalf for the player leaving the court. Unfortunately, because LeBron had left his team down one man, one of his teammates was forced to rush onto the court to replace him, resulting in yet another foul for the team. LeBron later apologized, stating that he had blown a gasket. Number 6. Out of players. With alternates and second stringers, most sports account for injuries or accidents that can occur during a game or a match and take the athletes down for a bit. It's not too uncommon for more than one accident to occur or for 2 or more players to go down in a single game in some sports. However, when a team loses so many players to injuries or fouls that it can no longer field a team, well, that's rare. But believe it or not, it does, and it has happened. In February of 2014, when the Lakers were squaring off against the Cleveland Cavaliers, fouls and injuries decimated the roster of the Lakers. The Lakers were cut down to only 3 eligible players by the end of the game. LA was fine for a time until one of their players fouled another and, by the rules, needed to exit the court. However, there was no one to replace him. So what happened? Well, an obscure rule actually saved the said player, and he was allowed to continue in the game, although his team was still flagged for his foul. Number 5. Mike Tyson's famous bite. We all know the story. Mike Tyson was slipping off his throne. His life wasn't going the way he was used to, and the world was slowly beginning to spiral into chaos as the boxer's inflated ego began to be challenged by reality. Mike was boisterous, confident, loud, and dangerous. Essentially, he was everything that the well-mannered Evander Holyfield wasn't. And whereas Evander might have taken the loss against Mike like a champion, the same couldn't be said about how Tyson reacted when he began to lose against Holyfield. As the fight began to shift in the favor of his opponent, Mike panicked, and apparently not knowing what else to do, he clinched with the boxer across from him and sunk his teeth deep into the man's ear. Tyson ripped a piece of Holyfield's cartilage away and forever damaged his own reputation. Luckily, his reputation wasn't tarnished forever though. Nothing that a cool face tattoo and a cameo in The Hangover couldn't cure. Number 4. A staged crash. Whether they're being paid off or have some kind of a weird plan for why it might benefit them, the fact is that athletes can and do throw their own events sometimes. That said, losing in some sports is a lot more high stakes than in others. In boxing, for example, a fighter can be carried by another. In tennis, there's no risk of physical harm for a player who chooses to throw a match. In basketball, one just has to make sure their team's a bit slower than the opponent's and they can take a dive. However, there are those sports that losing can truly be dangerous to themselves and those around them. Cycling, for example, where a crash can cause an athlete serious and high-speed induced bodily harm. And in the cycling world, there are those cyclists who are dedicated and perhaps crazy enough to risk it. Back in the 2012 Olympic Games in London, the British cyclist Philip Hines was winding the track before he slammed his bike into the ground in order to get another chance to restart the race, as, according to the Olympic rules, an accident is grounds for an athlete to get a redo. Hines admitted to taking a dive after the first race, but then later recanted his confession and claimed that he had just lost control of his bike. What do you think of this incident? Let us know down in the comments below. Number 3. Opening the way. Desperate times call for desperate measures. Sometimes a team just doesn't want to lose, and sometimes they're willing to put it all on the line for victory, even if it means risking international ridicule. And, well, sometimes they fell miserably. It was Super Bowl 46 in 2012, and Tom Brady, leading the New York Patriots, was duking it out against the New York Giants. A little less than a minute was on the clock, and it was the Giants' play, but the Patriots needed to make a comeback. They could not afford to let the Giants run out the clock. So the team made a daring call. The defensive line banked on Tom Brady's famous abilities as a quarterback, and they opened the way for the Giants to score a touchdown in order to keep more time on the clock for Brady to work with. Sadly, the Patriots ended up losing, and their prized quarterback couldn't save them. Yep, they gave up a touchdown for nothing. Number 2. Metrodome collapses. The Herbert H. Humphrey Metrodome was home of the Minnesota Vikings football team, a marvel of modern technology and a testament to show just how much Americans love football. The roof of this amazing stadium could open and close at the will of its operator. In rain, shine, or even snow, football could be played in the greatest of comfort inside this stadium. That is, until a whole lot of rain cracked the roof to pieces and caused its collapse. Luckily, no one was inside the dome at the time of the collapse, and no game was playing. But it was definitely a scary sight to see something that was made to be used on rainy days collapse due to rain. Number 1. A very concerned mother. Mixed martial arts is a brutal sport that has taken America by storm, and which is now spreading across the globe. This is even despite it having a rough start due to lawmakers and early public opinion in its infancy. Kicks, armbars, punches, and submissions of all kinds, fighters are subjected to the worst treatment imaginable, and they love it. However, apparently no one told that to the mother of Joe Fisher. After Joe lost a fight during the Ohio-based OFC 20 March Massacre 2, The fighter's mother quickly scaled the 9-foot fence of the cage in which the fight had taken place in order to tend to her son's wounds. The mother ended up having to be escorted away by police while her son was taken care of by medical personnel. What did you think of all this craziness? Do you have any sports stories that are more embarrassing than these? Let us know. We want to hear from you. And don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Until next time.